The bump thing is all screwed up, so it you can bring it up on boost, and then it you hit the bump button on the second time or the third time, second or third time, depending on if I'm counting accurately. Oh, you know what? I could turn it on my data log, but it just starts rolling away. Super, super annoying. So I just went up there and just turned the second bulb on and just did my thing. And the passenger bar sensor here, I put that 5,000 PSI sensor. Oh, look at this though. We actually have some data. So I'm gonna turn this thing around. Okay, so green line is that passenger bar sensor. So you can see that in the very beginning of the run right there, it tops it out. And then you can see as it starts going down track, let's go down here to where it's a little less, drops down to 4,100 PSI. And as expected, makes the gear shift, pegs it again. Oh, that's super cool. And then just slowly loses force as it goes down track. So that is really neat. Can you see that? Yeah, so it's all the way down to like 27, 25. It's holding up there. So this is actually really cool. Other than this right here at the beginning where it's just pegged, I wonder, even here, there's almost like a little chattery thing going on there. That's kind of interesting. I guess it's only like 100 PSI. Maybe there's like a little tiny air bubble in that thing, but that's really fascinating. That's cool. This actually did something. So this was my lamest tune-up that I had. It only went, 142.60. So I know I can for sure get that 10th back tonight, make a couple more licks and tinker around with this stuff. And I'm actually super stoked, man. That actually did something. So, all right, well, this is my first check-in for the night. This video is going to be maybe like 15 minutes long. So, okay, let's keep going. Okay, another update. So I turned it up a little tiny bit and it did go a little bit faster. It went like 570 instead of 578. And then I turned it up a little bit more at 4,000 RPM. So let's backpedal. So I've left this thing at 4,000 RPM on the starting line, and I've only been playing with the dome pressure, but I found the limit for how much dome pressure will actually make a change. So now I'm looking at changing over and saying, I'm gonna throw 200 PSI in it and then take the dome back out of it. So I wasn't able to get any more kind of bitchin' data because it's doing the same thing over and over again. So it holds onto that little flat spot right there as it's riding up the converter. So you can see this flat spot holds right up until the converter starts to roll over. And then, you know, I need to put that G meter on it because obviously it's decelerating there. So, and then it starts to lose pressure, still has the same spike right on the 1-2 shift, and then just slowly goes down until you lift at the end and you can see all the pressure just drops out of it. So that's at least cool to have proven that 5,000 PSI is enough to do something with it, but it's still gonna, I wonder if there's a 7,500 PSI sensor I could get. Do some research on that. So yeah, so what I found is that at 4,000 RPM right here, bouncing on the chip, depending on if it leaves at, so it's like 6 pounds of boost right there, depending on if it leaves at the top side of the chip or if it leaves on the bottom side of the chip, it's down a little bit of boost. So yeah, just keep playing with it, I guess, you know, just learn stuff. So my next thought for this was to take the dome pressure back out, because obviously more dome pressure is not making any difference. Take the dome pressure out and then just throw 200 RPM on it in the starting line, and then either it's going to zip the tire off or it's going to go down the track. So it'd be super cool if it went down the track.
what's happening, YouTube? I'm back. So I went to the track Saturday, drove the car up there, which was cool. Ran a bunch of 5-second runs, which is awesome. High 5-second runs, the best of a 570. Went a 70, a 78, a 75, an 82. But 82, I lifted I lifted super early. I saw the 330 light up at like I forget what it was, a 74 or something like that. So I'm just like, it's not going to be a quick run, so whatever. It was 10:30 at night. It's time to go home anyways. But so what I wanted to do, I got the wrong data log open right now, so let me open the proper data log here. So I did so last weekend I did that video, and we changed over to that 5,000 PSI sensor, which is super cool. That worked out. But I also wanted to get some converter data sorted out, and so I swapped from, you can see right there it says drive shaft RPM. Well, I had this as mile per hour, right? So in doing that, I made a little boo-boo. So what happened was, got the car up there. So I did that last video, did the oil leaks, fixed that stuff up. The car was ready to go. I didn't even have to work on it before I went to the track. I just loaded my stuff in it, took some fuel and my normal stuff, and went up there, drove up, and everything was super cool, right? So oh, that looks funny. Let's see if we can turn this back to none. That looks more better. That's weird. That looks totally different like that. Okay, well, whatever. So drove up there, took all my stuff, and didn't have to work on the car, which was great. And so I thought I was prepared, right? I had all my GoPro, I had both batteries for the GoPro charged, had both SD cards ready to go, had the tune-up and the computer ready to go. So like I should have been able to unload the car and go 565, 570, no problem. And everything should have been awesome. Well, none of that happened. So the first thing that happened was the first pass, got up there, put the thing on the brake. You can see it's building boost right here, 4,000 RPM, 5 pounds of boost. And then go to bump in. Here's your first bump. You can see the yellow line right there. You can see it goes to 12.7 volts, right? And then you can see this purple line is the trans brake. So this is the trans brake relay. This is the solid state relay that's breaking the power. So you've got this plugged into the ECU on the ground side. This is pulse width modulated input there. Input from the bump button. There's the blue line. You can see that the trans brake is never released because that's me holding the trans brake. Then another bump, and it's almost in as far as it needs to be. And on the third bump, you'll notice just after the bump button's released, the trans brake relay turns off, and then it starts to drive away. So let's change this RPM right here to 1500, so it's a little easier to view. You can get the scaling better. And so you can see right there, it's got 9 RPM, and then as we roll forward, we go to 84. Well, what happened was, if we go into the global file, here is trans brake relay. This is the output that goes to that solid state relay. Trans brake button is the button that's going to turn this relay on, right? And you need this in order for this relay to be on, you need the trans brake to be on. And you also need drive shaft. This used to be vehicle speed or mile per hour is below 25 miles per hour. Well, now it's drive shaft RPM is below 25. So you can see what happened. Right there, that's reading, it broke that 25 RPM threshold. Well, it can't have the trans brake on and be above that drive shaft RPM. So you're probably asking yourself, well, why do you have that extra input there, or this extra criteria? Well, this is so you can't turn the trans brake back on once you're moving. I thought it might be a decent safety feature for like driving around on the street. I got one of those cool Mosin Raceworks cord deals on my steering wheel, so like you can unplug the whole thing out of the back of it. But like, what if you forget? Like I noticed I was halfway home driving it home, and I didn't unplug it. So as soon as I got going, you can't turn the trans brake on. So I felt like, you know what, that's probably a decent safety feature, so it's in there. Well, it made it so 2 runs into the day, I'm like, what the heck is going on with this thing? I think it's the transmission or whatever, and it just threw me off for the whole rest of the day. And so it just kind of like broke my focus a little bit. So Here's that pulse width modulation setting, right? So anytime the voltage is below, you could just arbitrarily break this. This could all just read 0, and then you could just put, the only reason I even do have this 9 in there is just like because you saw that it was 12.7. What if the battery voltage was down to 10.5 or something like that, and the car is still running properly, but you just didn't have all the voltage? Well, then this wouldn't work if you didn't have the scale set right. So there's a little sneak peek. That's how I do the bump button on that car. And yeah, it takes a reduction of 50% duty cycle to get that thing to bump. I think it's the big slow external trans brake relay or solenoid. One of these days when I update the trans, I'll do an internal brake. So yeah, so this is what gigged me. So I need to change this to probably like 250, and then this won't happen again. So yeah, this is always, just keep in mind, like the car worked perfect in May the last time I was there. The only thing I changed was just that data entry, just to change it to change the I'll show you exactly what it changed. Let's make this even easier. So go back to my inputs, drive shaft RPM. All I did was, well, right here is at RPM. You can have it at miles per hour. I had this at miles per hour. You can see 410s, 30-inch tire. And that's all. That's what I changed. And like, you just wouldn't intuitively think it would change something else. But did it ever? It totally changed this. So there's 6 minutes worth of your life wasted just to say that when something goes wrong, it's probably your fault, and you should probably try to look at all the things. So moving on. So remember, I put that sensor in the 5,000 psi sensor in the trans brake, or not in the trans brake, but in that passenger bar. And here we go. So here's some data. So let's change this back to 10,000. This makes it so the drive shaft RPM, not 1,000, 10,000. Now the drive shaft RPM is scaled with RPM, and that looks like a beautiful curve. Let's go and look at this bar. So that's the orange line right there, because I love orange. I have a little video clip from at the track that I'm just going to throw in here, and it's like the first time that I opened it on the camera, and I'm like, oh wow, look at that. There's actually some data to review. So let's zoom in on this section right here. So you can let's go ahead and set the 0 time. So trans brake on, last spot that it's on, off, set 0. Okay, scroll over. Okay, so you can see that it still takes, this is that slow ass trans brake stuff, I think. Still takes 1/10 of a second to apply that bar to get some stuff moving, and it makes, we'll call this the first spot that it maxes out. It takes 3/10 of a second to max it out. So that's kind of interesting. And then it has like a little bobble, but that's only a 50 psi bobble. It's not huge, right? And then it pegs it at 5,000, and it holds it at 5,000. You can see the converter, like you can see it climb the ramp of the converter, right? Because it's coming from over here at 4,000 RPM, and it climbs to 59 right at 6,000, and then you can see the bars start to flatten out. So this is like rolling over that, getting the car accelerated, and it's rolling over. So you can also see in the shock right there too. Oh, sorry, this green line right here, this is the rear shock. So we started down here at 3.1, and we stretched it out to 5.6. So we get 2.5 inches of extension travel. I've seen it make 3.25. So, but this is only a 142 60 foot, so it didn't like it at 3.25, 3.5. It's like 125. So there's very obvious relationship between shock extension and power applied. So the air was bad. It was like 98 degrees or something like that on Saturday here in Ramona, and then it just, the air, I think the corrected altitude was in the 4,000 foot range. So I mean, it's not the worst that there ever was, but it's not that. It's definitely much higher than it was, and you could just tell the whole package was down on power. and not bumping in. This thing's on the trans brake a lot shorter of a time. And so this thing, 7 pounds, 7.5 pounds. So it was, yeah, it's kind of where it needs to be. So, but it seems like it'll make a little more boost when it's on the trans brake longer, like when you're bumping in and you're waiting on the light. So it's all information. Probably if you have a turbo car, you've probably run into that before. You probably know what I'm talking about. So, all right, let's talk. We're still talking suspension here. So you can see the bar start to make a change. Go down 1.44 seconds in. You can see the time right here if you want to watch for that. So it's mumbling. Let's go 1.44. So as you can see it start to drop. So this is, I really should have put the G meter on this thing beforehand. So the next time I go out with this car, it'll have the G meter on it. And that way we could look at that data too. And I think the G meter will tell us all the same stuff that this rear shock sensor is telling us, that the car is already decelerating, right? Like it's not a super powerful combo. So you get 3/4 or you get 1.2 seconds of really good acceleration, and the rest of it's just kind of rolling down. So you can see we're down to, there's a big spike. I'm interested, there's a little bump in the racetrack evidently or something right there, because that's a decent deviation in the shock for that pressure sensor too right there. And then it's just slowly fading down to 2,500, so we're half as much pressure as we had, but still 1,000 psi more than that 1,500 psi sensor would read. And then bam, it jumps up to pegs it at 5,000 on the gear change, which that's interesting that it makes that much jump in the gear change, but then falls right back down to 3,800, and then you're kind of floating around. And I assume that some of this is the racetrack. So like the car is settling, going up and down. There's a little bit of suspension movement. The track's pretty bumpy. So, and you can see it really clear in the GoPro footage, like how much the suspension's moving while it's going down track. So then you see another gear change right there. I think that's predictable, but you could see the average trend of that pressure in that bar, and then you could tell right where the power actually turns off. Boop, drops down to 0 psi. That is where it obviously completely has let off. So, but it drops down to, something like 25 to 2,800 psi towards the end down there. So it's definitely not pushing on it as hard, but still pushing on it harder than I thought it would. So I think that one of the things that I was worried about with this testing this is like, am I actually going to be able to prove anything with it? Is it going to show anything with this pressure sensor in this traction bar? And I'm pretty happy that at least we've got there's something to view here. I wonder if on a 125 60 foot, like once I get to take this thing to Vegas again, and during when it cools off and I've got a really good racetrack, how far out does it hold this? So can I get way more power down with that? And so I've got a new engine coming for this car too. So maybe the next month and a half or 2 months, I'll have the new motor for it, and it'll make a good 850 more horsepower than what this one makes. So I'll have a lot more power. Like, will it hold this flat line out way out here, right? Like, will it hold it out at 3 seconds? So I don't know. And that's in this configuration. So what my plan is to put the car on the drive-on hoist this weekend, measure the actual instant center with the car sitting at ride height, like which would be the front spring eyelet. I'm going to measure that. I'm going to measure the front bolt hole location height from the ground, and then the rear bolt hole location of the traction bar itself, get some angles, and I'll put all this together on a poorly assembled document so you can see it all, or just a cheesy drawing on SolidWorks or something, and you can see all the heights. And then what my intention is to, now that I have this much data, I'll probably just leave the tune-up alone and then start to move this bar angle and see, like, because I think if we add a bunch more power, I don't think we can do two things in one. I think we add power to this and then move the bar angle. You're maybe not proving anything because you've changed 2 of the inputs. So I know I can duplicate this 570 run pretty easy. I saved the tune-up, I saved all the stuff. So I'm just going to I'm just going to play with it for a couple more outings on, trying to run 570, just leave it like a bracket car and just not dick with anything, just try to get it to run the same, and then drop the bar all the way down in the back, which I'll tell you how much angle difference that is, and then maybe start to drop it down in the front and see if that makes a big difference in the, if it makes any difference, right? And then maybe we can start to analyze, maybe there's a time change here. Like how much pressure it'll make, and then how far will it carry it. So can we get a higher average pressure down run? Do we have a spot where it spins? Is there some stuff that we can extrapolate from that? So, so that's all the data that I found. I can't believe that's 15 minutes of rambling, but it is what it is, I guess. So that's everything that I found. And I'll go ahead and update everybody later. And once I have some more information, hopefully this turns out decent. I actually have a microphone, so the audio should be pretty good, unlike some of my other crappy videos that you can't ever hear me. And so until next time, we'll meet again.